one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We grow up learning about the terrors of America's past.
We learn about the people that protested and fought for human rights.
We settle for the belief that the civil rights movement is something of the past.
And that it has put an end to racism forever.
So why is it so prevalent today?
It is 2020, and it is normal to scroll through social media and come across the news of yet another innocent Black person killed by the police. We say justice for all, but rarely is that justice served to the Black lives that have been lost.
It is Monday night, and the big story on Action News tonight is a deadly police-involved shooting, and emotions are running high in the neighborhood. An investigation is already underway.
In West Philadelphia, on Monday, October 26, 2020, Walter Wallace was shot 12 times by 2 police officers.
He died in front of a crowd of witnesses, including his own mother.
It just hurts me so bad to see how the people is in the world. I pray things change. I pray we all one day could come together and get along.
After the news was released, countless Philadelphians raced to the streets with heartbroken fury. Peaceful protests took place, but that peace did not last.
Chaos struck as protesters were arrested. Parents were ripped out of their cars and beaten in front of their children, and the looting and rioting began.
Stores, companies, and pharmacies boarded up and shut down to prevent damage from riots in the streets.
Whether there was looting happening, whether there was, resistance that came out of people's rage or anger, I want to point out to folks like who is actually the aggressor of these situations. When we think about violence, I think it's always like one-sided, that we notice that the violent party is the one that's reacting, whereas we can kind of ignore all of the violence that has led up to it, to say that, people being systematically murdered without any kind of justice is not violent, is how does that make sense? Why is the focus on then people's reaction to something that's happened that is violent? It's really always interesting how the priority is property is of material things and not about life, right? And so people always feel like the value of life is whatever, but don't burn the buildings. What are we gonna do without the targets? What is our priority? What do we actually value in this system? We don't condone looters. We don't condone however people feel like they need to express their rage. One, because we believe that rage is righteous, is justified. But also, it does get people's attention. We know that it gets a reaction in a way that serves a purpose in movement. It is after it gets to a certain point that people want to come to the table and say, whoa, okay, what can we do to make things better? How do we get that to stop, right? So it does serve its purpose in the greater scheme of things, but it's really about being able to see the full picture and say, what is actually violent? What do we actually condone as violence? And who is the originator and instigator of actual violence?
The news of horrifying and brutal murders have taken precedence over mainstream media in recent past.
These police, amidst abusing their power and attempting to justify their actions, face little punishment, sometimes none.
Brown was shot and killed in Missouri after a police officer says Brown tried to grab his gun. Officer claimed self-defense and was never charged. Freddie Gray died in the back of a police van after police arrested him carrying a switchblade, which authorities later said was legal. 3 of the officers were tried and acquitted, leading prosecutors to drop their charges against the rest.
No justice! no peace.
What would you consider like some of the biggest problems that our justice system faces?
The biggest thing that we've been working on, I mean, we're explicitly an abolitionist organization. So that's first and foremost. We don't particularly believe in carceral systems, prisons, police. So the biggest start to defund the police. A lot of people get a little nervous when they hear us say that. They believe that a world without police means a world without safety. What safety really is comprised of is not having people surveil you or punish you in the way that police and the justice system does, but rather when we have community like infrastructure, when we have like social systems that can support us. And that's everything from making sure folks are housed, that they're fed, that they're educated, that they're employed, and that they have other resources like for their mental health, for their physical health. Just saying that like the social infrastructures are the things that actually comprise safety and keep us safe. Safety is something that is built from internal structures, from self-trust and the trust that you create through bonds and relationships with others.
On March 13, 2020,
Breonna Taylor was shot in her home in the middle of the night.
Police had entered her home with suspicions of her boyfriend.
Tonight, we're seeing new body camera footage of the chilling moments after Taylor was shot dead by police officers in her home last March.
With the misconception that there was a home invasion, her boyfriend got his gun and fired at them as they bombarded.
What is this about? We don't.
SWAT can come.
We're both just regular workers.
Hey, boss.
Where's she at in the apartment? She's on the ground. Where at? In the hallway.
The police fired back. Breonna was caught in the crossfire.
10-round shot.
5 hit her.
They left her to die.
Say her name! Breonna Taylor!
Months went by and she did not receive justice. A bill in her name against no-knock warrants was passed before any mention of a trial.
She became an icon, her name associated with providing justice for innocent Black humans. But with each time her name was said, posted, and made into a hashtag, it became more and more detached from her as an individual.
Then came her trial, where the police were convicted for the damage the bullet caused to the building.
They were punished for the bullets that did not hit Breonna Taylor.
Could that be the biggest downfall of our society priorities?
That the preservation of items and economic goods is prioritized over the well-being of people and their most basic right, life?
America's past is a sick truth that is hard to come to terms with.
Marginalized communities continue to face these consequences at a disproportionate rate. They continue to face obstacles in a way of their voice is being heard.
This continues to push the crooked idea
that their voice is not worthy of being heard.
People of color may not get shot in front of their homes as they leave to vote,
but the suppression of their voices results in the promotion of a system that benefits off of their oppression.
We have not outgrown all of the mistakes of our history. We simply relive and repeat them in modern ways.
MLK is recognized as one of many historical figures who worked towards the progression of Black rights and fought for equality.
However, he's often seen as just that, a historical figure.
He is not as deeply buried in history as many believe. His granddaughter, Yolanda Renee King, recently spoke at a protest.
Less than a year before he was assassinated, my grandfather predicted this very moment. He said that we were moving into a new phase of the struggle. The first phase was the civil rights, and the new phase is genuine equality. He said that we must not forget the days of Montgomery. We must not forget the sit-in movements. We must not forget the freedom rides, the Birmingham movement, and Selma. Papa King, we won't!
In 2020, a young girl's grandfather was one who had been shot for the color of his skin. He is one of many, far too many.
People continue to have their rights stripped away.
Walter Wallace's mother must live with the visual of her son being killed before her.
Shot repeatedly by the police.
He was a father,
a brother,
a fiancé,
a human being.
Breonna Taylor, an essential worker in a pandemic, was killed by police who have yet to face any true punishment.
George Floyd lost his chance to raise his daughter because he was killed, calling for his own mother in his final moment.
Elijah McClain can no longer play the violin to animals in shelters because he was killed.
Emmett Till never got to grow up because he was brutalized and murdered.
David McAtee was killed.
Michael Brent Charles Ramos was killed.
Drazon Reed.
And one Rose Jr.
Tina Marie Davis.
Marquise Golden.
Micaiah Lee.
Kwame Jones.
Kelvin White.
And far too many more.
Say their names.
So we don't forget.
Say their names.
Because they matter.